Hi, welcome to our fifth episode of Creatio's Tech Hour. And today's topic is going to be how to process multiple records in Creatio. My name is Lena, I'm an Academy trainer, and today we're going to be talking about three different approaches. The approaches that we are going to take a look at are first, how to create a process with a loop and with the correct loop to make sure that we only process the record once. Then we'll take a look at how to work with collections and how to process multiple records using collections. And last but not least, we're going to take a look at how to add multiple records using the add data element. I think that's probably an overlooked feature of that, but again, it will allow you that an opportunity to add multiple records at the same time and take a look at these three approaches within three different use cases. So let's dive in. The first process that we're going to take a look at is our, for a case that's basically will allow to email our employees with a list of overdue activities. For that purpose, I have created a couple of things. Well, first of all, I have my email template that I'm going to use in the Invoices. Then I also created a report form. Let me quickly show you that. I have a little print report set up here with overdue activities, so where you can list them. Again, quite simple, just a name and job title. The most important thing in this report is in here in my table of activities where I have the subject, start, due date, and the status. And just to make sure that I only have our activities here, I have my due date is less than today, and my status is not canceled and not completed, meaning the record hasn't reached any of the final statuses. So that's the report form I will be sending out to my contact to make sure that they finish all the activities. So let me close this. And let me show you one more thing I've done before proceeding with this process. So in my contact section, to work with the loop, I made sure to add two fields. So let me in one of the records. Added a report sent and report date fields. Report sent is a Boolean, allows me to track whether a report was sent. Basically, when we get to the update record element in the process, we're going to check this box and notify the system that, okay, this has been sent. We have processed this. Please don't send the report again. And with the report date, the reason I added this here as well is that later on, if we need to keep sending these reports to the same contact, which seems to be a fair assumption for this use case, we want to keep track of that the report date when the report was sent is not today. So maybe it was yesterday, maybe it was a month ago, and this is a new report. Again, so we do not keep bothering person with reports. And we also can continue to send out reports. Again, if your admin or whatever your case that you're working with will require only sending out one email, one notification, one report, then having a Boolean is enough. You basically check that the record was processed, and that's enough. You're not considering that this record will be used again within the same process. In my use case, I actually consider that the record will be utilized. A contact will be expecting another report when he or she has more activities that are overdue, and we would like to notify them of that. So let's go ahead and start building the process. So I'm going to go to the process library and create a new process. So I'm going to give this process a name. Overdue activity notification. And first things, what I need to do if I have a loop is count that I actually have anybody who would match my criteria. So what I'm going to do is add the read element, read data element, and count contacts with overdue activities. Okay, and I'm going to use it in the calculate number of records mode. My object is contact. And here is where things get a little bit complicated. Well, not complicated, I just need to use this filter that will have two scenarios. First is when a contact does not have any report and has overdue activities. And the second one will be for contact already received a notification report, but it was not today, so we can send them another one. So let's work with the first filter condition. I tell that my contact type has to be employees. Then I'm going to say that report sent, the value is no. And then I'm going to check for activities. Activity where the contact is the owner exists. And at least one of those activities is overdue. So activity due date is less than today. And the status doesn't equal canceled or completed. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to group these activities. I'm going to these conditions to make sure that my contact matches either this set of conditions or another set where the report was in fact sent out previously, but the report sent date is less than today. So sometime in the past, the contact received the report, but it's not today. So again, I bother the contact again and just notify there some activities that need to be looked at. So I'm happy with this type. Again, employee report sent. This time, yes, but report date is less than today. And again, checking for activities that the contact as an owner has activities that are overdue. Count exists. Due date. Day to day less than status doesn't equal. Okay, so here are my filters. Again, just need to make sure I group them. And now I have the following. My contact either matches all of these or all of these. And if I do have a contact like that, I will proceed with my process. If I don't, I can terminate, and I'm basically gonna change this to default flow and say, okay, if I don't have any context, or basically because I'll have a conditional flow here, but I'm gonna just terminate. Now, to avoid setting up this filter again, what we can do is just Control C, Control V, copy paste this. Let's rename this element to read contact, because now we need to read an individual contact that matches these criteria. Read contact. And change the mode to read the first record in the selection. As you can see, my filters are still there, which is great. I don't have to reset them again. And I can just drop this here onto my flow, change my sequence flow to conditional flow, and say that since I'm counting here, my result is going to be a number. I'm saying that number of records that I'm seeing here does not equal 0. So if it's 1, I still can run one loop. If it's more than 1, I can go more times. So here it is. And here I can label it, for example, doesn't equal 0. Oops, wrong element. So let's be a bit more descriptive. Contacts with overdue activities. Count doesn't equal 0. Okay, descriptive enough. Now, we read the contact. Great. One contact from here. You can set up by name, ascending, descending, things like that. So you can figure out who you want to read first. Since we're going to process them anyway, it's not going to matter too much in my process. So next, what I'm going to do is actually generate that report, save it to the attachment tab, to the attachment detail. And after that, we're going to bring back that file into the process and use it in the email. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to use process file. Generate report. In the mode as generate report, overdue activity report, where the contact ID equals the ID of this contact. So now you can give some basically prefixes to your file name, create a unique file name, maybe counting number of files you're generating. I'm not gonna show you, I'm not gonna emphasize this too much in this process, but in the next one, we're gonna take a look at how to work with the file name so you can have those unique file names. For example, if you're acting to generate multiple processes, multiple files within the same process. Okay, so here it is. Now we're gonna save it to attachments. I'm gonna save it here, contact attachment to this contacts record. Okay, here it is. Next, what I'm going, actually I can delete this. what I can do is again use my process file to pull this file into the process to use it in the email. So I'm getting the file from the attachments and notes, and I'm going to use it in the email contact attachment, where contact compare with parameter of the contact that we read initially. And I'm going to read the first record by creation date. So even if I'm going to have multiple records saved there, created on descending, still going to only add the latest record, the one that was created using this process. And I want to use it in the process. So that's what I'm going to do next, is use send email. Send email. From my email box, I have synchronized to Creatio. So today we'll be able to maybe send out an email or two to the contact. It's going to be a template message. Again, I've created this message prior to this session. Record from macros is going to, again, that's record that we read here. Select. The message will be sent manually, just so we can take a closer look at it. And I'm going to add some attachments. Home name, process parameters, process report, file, select. And last but definitely not least, modify data. I'm going to update my contact and basically let this anybody else, basically, or the system know that the report was sent and everything worked. So I'm labeling the flow. That's not what I want to do. Okay. Update contact. I'm modifying my contact object. Contact that I initially read. And the values are going to be for report columns, date and sent. So report date is going to be current date, and report sent will be true. Okay, after that, I can, let me zoom out a little bit, loop back and process the next record. So this is my complete loop. Too much. Read that there are multiple records, read individual record, generate a report, create an email, send the email, and then update the content and go back. And once we don't have any records left, we can terminate. So let's go ahead and click save. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to the process properties. I'm going to enable tracing. So later on, we'll be able to see how many records potentially we can work through. We're probably just going to do one or two just to make sure that we're sending some emails, and then work with this process. So let me refresh. Okay, properties, enable tracing, save. And what I'm going to do next is just from my command line, I'm just going to run process over do activity notification. Let's launch this process. So what I should see, since I'm sending my email manually, I should see an activity for that step. Okay, let's double check. That could be for my email. Maybe I'm the one with overdue activities. So here it is. And if I click send, I should see another one, somebody else. As you can see, my recipient has changed, Mary King. And in attachments, I will see another report. This time it's going to for Mary. Mary only has 2. And if I go into my process log, yes, I want to leave. I can take a look and basically understand how that is changing. So let's open this up. So I have context with overdue activities. I ran through this element twice, and in my data, in my trace data, I should be able to see the number of records. So first is 9 records. And the second time I ran through here, I should have less. I will have 8. Yes, there it is. And since the first one, I think the contact was me, let me double check that. I should have this, or I can do report sent. And the answer is yes. Yep, that's my contact. As you can see, report has been sent and the date. Okay, so that's the first way to approach this type of task where you have to process multiple records. You can go one by one. Okay, so for the next use case, we're going to take a look at how to work with collections. And with collections, what we're going to do is generate an invoice or order, and again, send them out to the customer. So remember, our orders can have either one invoice, depending on how many payment steps we have, or multiple invoices. So for example, here in this order, if I go in the order details, as you can see, I have 2 payment steps. So I can have 2 invoices within this order. And let's say that I want to be able to just hit this one button, select my order, and just send out all the invoices connected to this order. This where collections come in. They'll be helpful to me. And with the help of collections and sub-processes, I'll be able to create basically this one button approach to my user. When going to the order, click the button, send out invoices, and the system will generate multiple invoices for that order. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to build that. I'm going to create a new process. And invoices, I'm going to call it invoices. It's going to be launched manually again. I'll be connecting it to the section, and basically it's going to be kind of like a push of a button for the user. So since this is going to be launched manually, I'll need to add a parameter for my record identifier, order ID. Okay, so let's start off by seeing the order information. We'll need the number, things like that, who the customer is. Need order. And later on, we'll read all the invoices connected to that specific order. order ID. Here. Okay, next step would be to read all the invoices, and that's where it's be a collection, read collection of records, read invoices. So, and collections, we just switch the read data element to the mode read collections instead of read the first record in the selection. This way we'll get multiple reads. So make sure to select read collection of records. Now, I'm going to be this time reading my invoice where the order will be compared to that order ID parameter. Again, here you can change the read as many records as like 50 should be reasonable enough, but potentially maybe there are certain orders that you can have that will have more than that. So keep that in mind that if you're working with collections, how many records you do to read, because right now we do have a limit. So we are limiting that we're going to read the first 50 records. And if we need to, we'll sort that here. The one thing I need from the invoice is basically the ID. That's the only column that I need. Remember, when working with collections, whatever data that you will specify, what record data should be processed, then that's the one that will be available basically when you're working with this collection. Most of the time, if you're utilizing this to process some other records, you can just read the ID, for example, of these, in my case, multiple invoices. And later on, I can get more data from my invoice just in a separate sub-process to keep things simple. But in the collection, you can also read other fields as well. And that's the information that will be stored within the process. And then you can map it and send it out either using a web service, if there's an integration that will require that you have working with a collection, or maybe into another process. Okay. With the collection, if you're working with sub-processes, there are a couple of steps that you probably would like to, you would want to take in order to avoid some confusion. So once I read my collection of records, once I set its ID that I'm interested in, what I'm going to do next is go for the sub-process. And this is going to be an entirely new process. It's going to be pretty simple. It's just going to let me generate that new invoice. Generate invoice. And the parameter that I am capturing here is my invoice ID. Save, save. Okay, so let's build this process and then return to the previous one. So I'm going to read my invoice. First record in the section from the object invoices. And this is, again, here within the sub-process, we are processing an individual record. So with the collection, basically, what we're doing is setting up the sub-processes that will be launched to process all those records that we gathered within the collection. So it could be a couple of records, like in this case, one or two probably, or it could be 50, 100, 1,000 records, things like that. And for each of those records to work with that record, what we're launching is a separate sub-process. And I'll show you how to map that so everything will work perfectly well. But first, I'm going to build this one because this is pretty simple. Process parameter. Then I'm going to count the number of attachments. Oh, they're already in read invoice. I'm going to count the number of attachments. So when I create a naming convention, what I will be doing is adding a +1 calendar, and I'm going to basically labeling my each invoice a new number. So I'm going to know that this is the latest invoice. So I don't have the files with the same name. So it's a different version. Count number of attachments. And this is going to be calculate number of words. Oh. Actually not invoices, but file. Where is it? Where is it? File and link of invoice, yes. And where invoice equals to the invoice ID. And for that, I'm going to add a parameter, invoice number. And the value is going to come from that counter +1. Actually, we need a formula here. Formula +1. And last is going to be our process element file to save this generated process to the attachments. So which we're generating invoice where invoice. Oh, yes, the ID of the, since we are in the invoice object, we're comparing this to this parameter and in attachments. And in the file name, what I'm going to do is use the formula or to add this invoice number. So, and what I can do is, for example, underscore plus invoice number. As I mentioned before, the invoice, or actually, let's make this a little bit more interesting. We'll give it invoice, and then we're going to add the number order. Actually, invoice number underscore invoice number. Oh, I'm missing a plus sign. Okay, all good. Send, save it to attachments of the file and link of invoice to the same record. Okay, save. So I built my sub process. Again, this is fairly simple simple process, but it allows me to generate an attachment, save it to the record. And once I come back here to my main process, this is where the action will happen. I need to map out my invoice ID here. My invoice number is not something I'm interested in. Obviously, this is the counter that I'm using to count for the number of attachments. And here I do need to send my ID. So I'm going to process parameter, read invoices ID. my advice would be, when working with collections and sub-processes, to first create this element that reads your collection. Then create your sub-process element and go into your sub-process, create an ID, for example, or any of those parameters that you need to be bringing into your process. So into your sub-process, save them. So save all those parameters, return to the main process, and then populate the value from the process elements. So this way, that's the easiest one. Now, as you can see, the system knows I'm working with a collection. So I'm going to go to I have two modes, sequential or parallel. Again, think about how many records you'll be processing. If you're expecting to process one or two, parallel is fine, especially if you need for them to work at the same time. But if you're looking into processing a lot of records and they're all going to be launching together in parallel, just make sure you do not overload the system. So if the system is overwhelmed, that might be a bit of a problem. But that's, again, when we're talking about tens of thousands of processes being launched simultaneously. So it's not a one or two instances. It's actually a pretty high number. So for me as a user, sequential is also fine. The process works so fast. I will not be able to notice the difference between parallel and sequential. So, okay, my process is here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a getaway, because I can have a B2B customer or B2C customer. So if I have a B2C customer, I have a contact. If I have a B2B, I need to first read the account information, get the primary contact per se, and send that person an email with invoices, basically. So let me build my first flow. Let's move this. So first option is going to be, I'm actually going to make it a default flow and call it B2C order. So I already know who my customer is. I have the contact. So I'm going to contact, and the object is going to be contact as well. ID of the contact compares to the parameter to the contact here. Now, if I do have a B2B order, so it's a company, what I can do here is read the account. That account will come from my order as well. And this is going to be my conditional loop. I'm saying that the account is not empty. It's just the way that it's set up right now on the page. It's either contact or an account. You cannot have both. So let's go B2B order. And what I'm going to say, that account here is not empty. So I have an account. And after that, I'm going to circle back to the contact. This way, I don't have to have both, or I don't have to create another parameter. I can just work this out here. And what I can do here, instead of reading just this contact that's listed in my order, I can also read read the primary contact here. So the ID of the contact could potentially be of the account's primary contact. So since I'm using IDs to filter my records, it can either be the ID that's listed For the order, if I have a B2C order, if it's populated, if it's not, then it's gonna check whether I have the memory contact, and we'll take a look at both scenarios. So next, what I'm going to do is bring in those files. Again, I can have multiple files. So what I'm going to do here is gather all the invoices. Oh, again, I'm typing in the flow. This is not what I'm trying to do. Process invoices. Attachments and notes of the objects, and this is going to be my file and link of the invoice. That's where my invoices are stored, and here I want the invoice connected to my order, and actually connected to my order. Okay. Again, make sure to double check your limit of records that you want to read. And here I want to sort the records by created on. And I can basically say maybe sending. Actually, I need to just make sure that they were created on today. That's what I need. Created on today. Okay, so the sorting doesn't matter, just as long as I have the filter created on today. And next, I'm going to have my send email. Send invoices. So again, I'm using the email I have connected to the contact, read contact. And by the way, so this way, as you can see, I don't have to have a formula, I don't have to have another parameter. I only have this element read contact. And this way I avoid the confusion. If I have a B2B or B2C order, I can work with both. What message to send? Let's do a custom message. I'll have a notification template prepared. Order invoice. And again, we can put some text into here. So just something simple. Dear with contact, full name, your invoices or order, and we can do order number as well. So number are attached. Regards. Oh. Team. Okay, and just save. Again, nothing fancy here. Let's send this manually, just so we can see what's going out. And my attachments are added from process invoices from files. So let's go ahead, save, and test everything out. One more thing that I'll need to do is connect my process to the section. Okay, so let's go to the order section and just quickly add this process to the section so it can be launched for a specific record. because that's what we intended in the process. Okay. Send invoices. Save here as well. Okay, changes have been saved. So let's exit. Let's refresh our page. Okay, and let's select that order 28. Actually, let's create 2 invoices for that order because right now there are no invoices, so we're not going to generate anything. So I'm going to quickly click invoices. Okay. Okay, invoice 1, that works. Let's create another one. Okay, so I have 2 invoices. Send invoice. Here's my email here again. To Smith at Getaway Invest, James Smith, your invoices for order 28 are attached. Let's see if they came through. Invoice 1, invoice 2, copy 1, copy 2. You can download and take a look at them. We need to, but maybe some of the products didn't come through. We'll need to double check. So that's probably it, but the total amount is here. So there's some information there. We just quickly created invoices. So let's go back to the order, just double checking. Yeah, probably just didn't added the products. So the products are not here, so that's why. But the amount is here. The file is saved to the attachment. If I try to generate it, and it's going to be here as well. So this is how you can process multiple records using collections. It can help you automate processes like that when you need to gather multiple files and add them as an attachment. You can do that for a variety of things as well. So you're gathering your records that match certain criteria. You save them you read them as a collection, and then you launch sub-processes, parallel or sequential, and then process each record individually. Okay, so let's take a look at one that I have pre-built. It's a process that can help you schedule team meetings and add all the necessary participants to that activity. So let's take a look at that process and I'll show you why that's helpful. So in the process, we're utilizing the add data element to add multiple records at the same time. So that's the last element here. So let's first take a look at the flow of the process, and then I'll show you why this is very handy in a situation like that. So my idea is that you can for example, ask somebody, or you want to schedule a team for your entire department. And while if you have a couple of people working together, so maybe your team is small, 5 to 10 people, it's not hard to add them as participants to an activity. So they see that activity in the Creatio activity section, so they see that on their calendar. But if you have multiple people, or not multiple, but if you have tens, hundreds maybe in your department, and you want to schedule a meeting for everyone, adding them everybody by hand is not very convenient. It's time consuming. It's just not good. Obviously, there must be better. And let me show you how to do that. So with this process, I'm basically selecting an employee from any department. I'm reading the department or their organizational unit. Then I'm selecting the meeting date, adding the activity for the main person, and then adding participants, right? There in activity, there is also additional participants that you can add, and I'm adding those participants to the activity. And this is where my add data as add selection is helping, because this in this add data, I'm just adding one record. I'm adding one activity, right? So my activity, add one record, start date from this element, subject. I'm just basically using let me show you. In the formula, I have the name of the department and then team meeting. So the owner is the employee from here, their contact, and the due date is just, I'm adding 1 hour to the meeting date and time. So once I've selected my meeting, but with the schedule for team, I'm using another mode, not just one record, but add a selection. Oh, sorry. I'm a selection from an object contact where employees, they have an employee in the necessary organizational unit. So if the contact is connected to an employee record, because again, employee section is a different object in the system, you need to keep that in mind, and it's based on a contact record. So we're adding a contact to an activity. Activities are working with contacts rather than employees, and I'm selecting that they have the correct organizational unit. We're adding all these values right together. We're adding the activity, that's our record ID from this created meeting, and participant, that's the result column from this selection. So all the contacts that are in this organizational unit as employees will be added by their ID as participants to the activity. So let's go ahead and check out how this works. So I'm going to go to my employee section. Let's select a department. So for example, marketing. I'm going to run the process, schedule team meetings. There's only 2 people. I'll show you that you can do obviously with more. I'm going to select meeting date as 29. Sure. Let's do 4 p.m. Done. And if I go into my activities, here's my marketing team meeting. I'll show you that. That's the one that I want. It's for April 29th from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. And participants are 3 people that work in this department. So let's run this for another one. Let's do accounting, maybe more. Salespeople have more. So John Best, for example, schedule meeting for April 26th. Let's do a 3 p.m. meeting. If I go to activities, there is the sales meeting for 26 from 3 to 4 p.m. and the participants are all the employees in that department. So that's three different approaches